Good evening. Welcome to Vibin with Ashley Live. I'm your host, Ashley Live, and this is episode 159. My guest this evening is the incredible singer, songwriter, guitarist, Amanda Ayala. Now, Amanda was on my show last May. So Amanda was on my show in May 31st, 2021, episode 81, and now she's on episode 159. So a little bit about Amanda. She's from Westchester County, New York. She has a captivating stage presence, and in 2015, she was featured on The Voice Season 9, Team Adam Levine. And guess what, guys? Amanda released her new single, Doing Better, yesterday. So Amanda's coming on the show to talk all about this new single, and Amanda's in the house. So Amanda, whenever you're ready, let's get this party started. Hi, guys. I hope you're having a great weekend. Hello, hello. What is your favorite song that Amanda sings? Hey, guys. Hi, Amanda.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well, so I cannot complain.
Yes, and I'm sure you're having such a great weekend because your new single, Doing Better, was released yesterday.
Yes, it was. And it was definitely an exciting way to kick off the weekend. You know, the response and reception has been super, super great, and the outpouring support has been awesome. So I've just been super grateful, and I'm just so glad that people are finally able to hear the song. I've been waiting to drop it for so long, and now that it's finally out, it feels like a little breath of relief.
Yes. So what have the last 24 hours been like for you?
It's been a little crazy. You know, it kind of comes in waves. You know,
Yeah.
Like in the morning, I had my kind of normal routine, but I think I was anticipating the 10 a.m. drop, and so the jitters were there. So it's been coming in waves, but it's a little hectic in times, but I just try and take it with a grain of salt. Like when the phone blows up and everyone's like, I've been downloading it, I've been listening to it. So it's a lot of fun and it's exciting. Release days are always my favorite.
Definitely. I know, it's so fun because it's like this project that you've been working on, it's finally released into the world and people are able to say, I've been streaming it, like I want to know more. So
exactly,
that's why you're on my show, because first you're going to sing it for us, and then we're going to get into like the whole backing, like the inspiration and any fun stories that you want to tell the beautiful people right now watching about Doing Better. Sound good?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Beautiful. So take it away, do your thing.
All right, so this is a live rendition, first time singing it live, of Doing Better. Don't do well at the parties, I can't control what's come over me. I'm drowning now, and I can't get out. Too many people talking, can't even hear myself. I think I'm falling to my old ways. So if you see me out and about in a corner hanging to myself, don't need to be rude, seem excluded, but my mind is really somewhere else. Wish I could make some new friends, party on the weekends, spark a conversation with someone I just met, make out with a stranger, laugh about it later, go and live my life with no regrets. But my mind's wired just a little differently, and I can't shake the social anxiety. But I've tried. Oh, I wish that I was doing better. Look to my phone for its safety, acting like it's gonna save me. I keep scrolling through the same old news, nothing's changed. No, I wish I wasn't insecure and gave into all the petty things and everyone or what they think. I can't block it out. I'm filled with self-doubt and I hate it. Wish I could make some new friends, party on the weekends, spark a conversation with someone I just met. Make out with a stranger, laugh about it later. Go and live my life with no regrets. When my mind's wired just a little differently, and I can't shake the social anxiety, but I've tried. Oh, I wish that I was doing better, better, better. Guitar solo. Don't mean to be rude, but my mind is really somewhere else. Wish I could make some new friends, party on the weekends, spark a conversation with someone I just met. Take out with a stranger, laugh about it later. Go and live my life with no regrets. My mind's wired just a little differently. I can't shake the social anxiety. I've tried. Oh, I wish that I was doing better.
Yes!
Amanda!
I love it. And I love that it was like the first official performance since the song dropped.
It is, and that's why, it's funny when I was like rehearsing it today, I was like, man, this was so different singing it live and then going in and tracking it. So I was like, I really gotta catch my breath with this one. So it was definitely cool to do it live.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and choosing to talk about this single. So I just want to jump right into it. Can you give people that just heard that song for the first time a little bit of background into what's going on in your mind when you write a song like that?
Sure. So honestly, this is kind of one of the first songs that I felt like I started to become a little bit more honest. I typically write a lot of love songs or heartbreak songs, but I got a little bit more honest in this session. I normally pull up a Logic session, I get a guitar out, but there was something, and I had that bass line in my head, and I tracked it down, and there was something about it that I was like, you know what? For some reason, I don't know why, I was feeling very open, and I was like, I want to talk about me instead of talking about a relationship. I want to talk about the relationship with me and myself, and be a little honest with myself. And I was just kind of in my feels that day, and I started kind of writing all the things that I wish that I could change about myself, and that's essentially where Doing Better came. And it stems on the social anxieties that I face, with everyday life and going out with friends. And the song really just came naturally. I think I finished it in about an hour, and that's kind of when I knew. I was like, okay, there's something here, especially if the words kind of jumped right on the page, and I didn't really have to even work for it. So it was a special moment writing it, and especially I wrote it in this studio right here. So it just came together so naturally and so organically, and I'm just very happy that it's now out, and people are relating and they're connecting with it as well. And I know it makes me feel comforted knowing I'm not the only one that kind of goes through things like this.
Yeah, I think social anxiety is one of those things a lot of people don't talk about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And for the longest time, I didn't. I just kind of knew I always felt anxious, and I knew I never really liked to essentially go out, but I didn't understand why. And I was like, oh, it's not a real thing. It's just I just kind of brushed it aside. But the older I've gotten, the more kind of self-aware and accepting that it's okay that I, kind of feel this way when I go out and or just do my everyday things. And that's kind of why I wrote the song, just because, and it felt good to kind of get it off my chest, because I feel like the moment I wrote it is the moment that I've started to evolve from it and try and grow out of that as best as I can.
Yeah. And I think it's really cool that you open up the doors and you're like, okay, so I've talked about relationships in the past, but now I want to talk about this relationship that I have with myself. And it's kind of difficult for me at times, and I'm working through it. And, I might be going through this, but I feel like a song like this is going to help so many people, because they're like, I feel that. I feel the same way.
Exactly, and there's some form of comfort, like, you know, when people kind of band together and they're like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I go through that too, and it kind of like starts and stems a conversation, and it makes it relatable, and it's like comforting for other people, you know, and because essentially a lot of people when they heard this song at first, they were like you have social anxiety. I would have never have guessed. You know, you perform, you know, you're in the public eye and you're on stage, and I said, it's funny because music is the outlet which makes me comfortable, but the minute I step off stage, it's like totally going back in my shell. So it's just it's nice for them to know that I go through things, like, you know, just because I'm a musician, I go through it just the same.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's funny that people say that because, right, you've played with a bunch of people, you've been on TV shows like The Voice and Who Will Rock You. So when people see you, they're like, oh my gosh, Amanda, and then like you start talking to them and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm kind of nervous. Like, I'm nervous with one-on-one, but like in a room of 500 people, I'm good.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. You put it perfectly. Being in front of like a ton of people, it's like every single person in the room matters, but essentially it just makes it easier because it's like you're not talking again one-on-one. It's not as intimidating as speaking to somebody one-on-one and being and overthinking everything. Like, I overthink everything that I say. Like, oh, did I say something stupid? And then like word vomit comes out like 9 times out of 10. So it's just like that was a perfect thing. And that's why I think being a musician is so great, because you get to like talk about, it's like your own personal diary that then you're sharing to the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, it just kind of opens the floodgates for a lot of people that feel the same way as you, because I feel like there's times that I struggle with that as well. Like, if I just walked into a bar tonight, I wouldn't really want to talk to anybody. Like, that's just me. Like, I wouldn't want to talk to people. Other people are like, oh yeah, I want to talk to like everybody and meet like, you know, 5 or 10 new people. I'm like, I'm kind of just like to myself.
Me, it's exactly like the exact same thing. So I'm glad we're on the same page there. Yeah, because my friends, they'll go out and, you know, they're like very lively, and not to say I'm not lively, but I'm just like, I just will never go out of my way, you know, to like do something like out of my comfort zone. So I always just like, I stick with my group and that's it.
Yeah. So talk about the creative process. You said that this song was written within an hour. When did you actually start writing the song? Was it like a recent song, or is it something that you had like stashed away?
I've been sitting on it for a few months. The whole song was finished recording back in August, and I actually wrote, I think I finished the lyrics, I want to say, it might be about a year ago now, that it was officially written in here, and then it was finished recording in August. So it's been marinating for about a year or so, but, you know, when I first wrote it, it was just me, myself in this room, and yeah, just about a year ago.
Mm-hmm. So the bass line came first.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, the bass line was the first thing that I like pulled up. I pulled up a Logic session. I had you know, some presets set up, and I just started. And you know what it is? Paramore is a big, you know, inspiration for me. And Hayley Williams said in an interview, and this is kind of something that I took from her when I was, you know, writing this song. It's a song called Fake Happy. You listen to the song and it's really fun, or like Hard Times, that entire album is a lot of fun music. But then when you actually like strip it down and you take the music away and you listen to the lyrics, you're like, oh, this is kind of sad. Like, this is like a sad song hidden behind a pop beat. And that's essentially what I wanted to do with this song, because I love when you have the two polar opposite things and then you put them together in one. So I wanted to make something that can make people groove, but also like relate and feel something like deeply, because I felt like this was honest. But like, then again, if you're not listening to the lyrics and you're listening to the beat, you're like, oh, this is a fun song.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh wait, I really actually listened to the lyrics. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like, maybe there's a struggle going on here.
Exactly. Like, there's like this hidden message essentially in the lyrics. They're blatant, but then at the same time, like, if you're just listening to the beat, you would never know. So that's kind of my inspiration where I went into the writing session. I was like, Hayley Williams put that best, and I was like, I would love to write a track that kind of has that hidden symbolism in it, and that's exactly kind of what I did here with Doing Better. So you got that funky beat, but then you have like more of a serious topic behind it.
Yeah, I love how it starts with the bass line and there's that kind of like little solo in the middle. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like, this is fun. I can like bop my head to this.
Exactly. And that's kind of where like I kept it, you know. And Dua Lipa is another big, you know, inspiration. Her Future Nostalgia album was something that like I was like on a crazy kick for. You know, I'm a big sucker for like 80s retro sounds, and that's kind of what I've been doing lately. So big ups to Dua Lipa on there. But I tried to keep it like, you know, the original format, you know, and adding that solo in there too. I felt like kept it to like my old rock and roll roots, because when I do it live, you know, my guitarist MK Spano, who's the one that tracked it, is going to be shredding that live. So I'm excited for that too.
Cool. And I love that you said that you're influenced by Dua Lipa as well as 80s. Because I think with 80s music, there's like a lot of like synth pop rock kind of thing going on. And I love that you brought that to 2022. I think that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I've been, and all my friends, like, you know, my bass player and guitarist are like, man, like, you're just, like, really on this, like, 80s kick. And I'm like, I can't get off of it. It's nice to just add those little elements in there, you know, in everyday music, because it's, like, it's a refreshing thing to hear because, you know, like 2000s pop was so distinguished. And then now you listen to, like, 2020 pop on,
Yeah.
it's, you know, you're getting all those retro sounds coming back and all the nostalgia feelings. So that's why I'm, like, I'm trying to jump on this wave as long as it's there for, because it's my favorite.
Yes. Okay. So 80s music. Who did you love from the 80s when you like think of like 80s bands, 80s pop stars, 80s rockers? Who are you into?
So honestly, I am a huge Pat Benatar fan. Like, even though she's like the definition of pop rock, you know, her,
Yeah.
Joan Jett. I'm a big Blondie fan.
Mhm.
And then I also go back to the roots of, like, you know, rock and roll, Guns N' Roses, Chicago. Those are like all my 80s, like all the 80s ballads too. But it's just like I take those in, like Chicago's piano synthesizers and things like that. Like, I'm like, put those in my record and I'll be very, very happy. So I pull stems from, you know, all inspirations from the 80s.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the 80s. Like you said, Pat Benatar and like Joan Jett, and then like Chicago. Like I think with Chicago, they have the horn section, but then they have those ballads, and you're like, ooh, like they just did something really cool that it's like nothing I've ever heard before.
Exactly. And that's why, like, literally I have a bunch of Chicago vinyls, and my always go to is Look Away. My mom introduced me to that song when I was younger, and there's something about that piano part in that song that just does something to me, and I'm like, I'm gonna strive to have a piano sound and a song like that one of these days.
Very cool. Love that. So what do you want fans to take away from doing better?
I think the biggest takeaway, you know, especially when listening to the song, is that, you know, in our age, in my age group especially, like, we're conditioned to feel like we have to go out all the time. We have to, you know, you see it on social media, everyone's like having a blast, going out, partying. Like, at the end of the day, like, if that's not you, like, that's okay. And like, you're there's nothing wrong with not liking that or not being conditioned to that kind of environment. And if you don't like it, that's totally fine. And you just find comfort in that and just do things that you love to do. And at the same time, like, don't change for anyone. And I think that's kind of where I say, like, I wish I was doing better, but at the same time, when I self-reflect on the song, staying in or doing game nights is just as cool as going out to a club or something like that.
Yeah, I think you got to ultimately do what works best for you, right? Because there's people that go out all the time, and it's like, don't you ever just like want to be home, like in front of your TV, eating popcorn, watching a good movie or show?
Exactly. That's how I am. I consider myself like such a homebody. It's like rare to like get me out, and especially if it's like 2 days in a row, I'm like, wow, we're really stepping out here. But exactly, I'm definitely a homebody in that sense.
Yeah. So being a homebody, what are things that you like to do? Like, what is like the perfect night for you?
Honestly, I will say, like, last night, me and my good friends, we all went out, which is like, you know, but it wasn't in that setting. We went to, for a little like release get together or something. We went go-karting. We went to the arcades. Like, you know, it was just like, I love doing things like a little kid. Like, that's my type of fun. Like, just playing games. And I think that was like, that's my typical night. Or like, even me and my friends, we get together, we'll have poker nights or something. Just very like low key, and I just enjoy that because I enjoy like smaller groups, good conversations, and like when I go out like, to a bar or something like that, I'm like, I don't remember any of those nights because it's like they all just kind of blend together. When you go out with smaller groups, like you kind of memorize them more.
Totally. Yeah. And I love what you said about like being like a kid, like a Dave and Buster's or something like that, where you're like, oh my gosh, let's race. Let's do like this race car game, or let's shoot hoops and see who wins.
Exactly. Because it at the end of the day, like I went home last night, and you know, being on like such a high, like a just having the song come out, and like, you know, all the social media messages, but then getting a good night to just like be able to celebrate the accomplishment in such a like a youthful way was like the best combination.
Cool. So as far as like, if you're an arcade, do you have a favorite arcade game or like thing that you like to do?
I love skee ball. Like, that is my number one thing. Either skee ball or I'm like a big basketball. Like, I'm always at like the basketball hoop shooting them. Like, those are my two go-tos.
Yeah, those are actually the two that I just thought of, because skee ball, I love it, but I don't know the trick to like, I never make it in the holes. Like, I never do. It always like hits the random thing, and I'm like, oh, like I want to be good at it.
it's the underhand flick. I always say it's the delivery and the underhand flick, and then it'll just float right in there.
Love it. So I want to talk about your songwriting and how it's evolved over time. So can you talk to us about that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my songwriting, you know, is definitely evolved since I really seriously started to songwrite, because it wasn't until the voice was back in 2015 when I was like a senior in high school that I really started to see just how behind I was in the sense of songwriting. I always just covered songs. I sang other people's songs, but when I went out there, I was around a ton of other kids my age and even younger that were miles ahead of me writing like these great songs. And I said, oh, I like really need to, you know, put the pedal to the metal here and, you know, start writing some content. So back from 2015 to now when I started, you know, I think essentially in my songwriting, like my hooks and my melodies have just gotten a lot stronger. Because I think I now listen to so much more music that I'm pulling from so many different inspirations and so many different ideas. Like I always say, I wish I could write like a country singer in a pop way, because country lyrics are just like 10 out of 10. They're so witty. And I think that's something that I've started to get a little bit more better with. You know, my rhyme schemes have strengthened, and my top lines and songs, I think, are just miles better than what I was doing. I would rhyme like the most corniest things to like force things together. But now I think it's just like the structure of songwriting as a whole has just gotten a lot more stronger. And I hear it essentially even in my songs. When I first released them to now, like I think that just the formatting's a lot better.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of like working out, right? Like you're not going to get a six pack in 2 weeks. Like you need to consistently be working at it. So the more you write and the more you do it and the more you learn from people, the better you become.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things too. And it's like, I always love like hearing a song and being like, wow, I wish I wrote that, because it's like, I'm going to take whatever, like why that impacted me so much and why I wish I wrote that. And, you know, just start to learn and like, you know, and like learn the lyrics and the build of the actual song, but then also like tap into my creativity on the feelings on how to like mesh a song that someone says, oh, I wish, you know, I wrote that. So that's the biggest goal.
Do you write every day?
I try to write every day, whether even if it's like a small stanza, but I think some days they'll go be like nothing, and then all of a sudden it can be like 12 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden like boom, like a line, and my eyes are shut, and a line comes up in my head. I'm like, okay, I gotta write it down, because you never want to lose some of like what could be, you know, some of like the best work that you've done if you miss out on it. So I try and write every single day.
Yeah, because like you said, like the muscle, you just want to keep building on it and building on it. And I think it's like you can just be inspired by the most random thing. Like you're right, you might just shut your eyes and all of a sudden a thought pops in your head and you're like, wait, not going to bed right now, I'm just gonna jot that down.
Exactly. Like I'll look at my voice notes, like, and I'll listen to them, and like you just hear like mumbo jumbo. I'll be like whispering in my phone, and it could be like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like something sparks in my mind, and I'm like, well, I have to get it right now or I'll lose it. And, and it's funny too, because I try and like write every day. And the number one person I show like anything that I first write to and track down is my mom. Like she's my go-to. And she sometimes doesn't understand the process. I'm like, Mom, this could be like terrible, but I just want to show it to you because I always want to consistently write. And she'll be like, oh, that's like, okay. Or like, oh, that's good. So like, so she's always my critiquer in that sense. So I'll always bring her like a song a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And then she's probably like, oh, that's really neat. Because it's good to get a different perspective on, even if it's just like one line.
Exactly. Her, and especially her and my brother. It's funny. I remember bringing Doing Better to them specifically. I wrote it. I like had like a full blown demo. I think within that day that I wrote it, I brought it upstairs. And sometimes when I write things, they're like, "This is not it. This is like not good." But there was something special about it because when I first brought it up, demo and all, scratch, they knew that something was there, and they were like okay, like I'm really liking this one. So that's kind of where there are like little nudges of like validation for me. It's like, okay, let's keep going with this one.
Yes, very cool. And it's so good to have a support system of people that you can be like, hey, maybe I don't even need you to tell me if you like it or not. I just want you to listen.
Exactly. That, and I know sometimes I have to like tell that to my mom too. I'll be like, I don't even really want if you like it or not. I don't even want to know if you like it or not. I just like want you to hear it. I just need to get it out there, and I need someone else other than me just to hear it.
Yeah, I totally get that. So what advice would you give to other songwriters?
I think the biggest advice I would give to any other songwriter is like just to be yourself and like tell the story that you want to tell. Like don't like a lot of times, I mean, it's fun. You can write like a fictional song because not some of the songs I write have absolutely nothing to do with me or my real life. But like if you're trying to write a song that like you want to like be moved by or something, like just tell the honest story that you want to tell from start to finish, and like look at it as a book. You know, your first verse is your introduction. You know, your pre-chorus is starting to get to that body, and then your chorus is like the full like climax of the story, and then your come down is the bridge. And that's kind of how I look at it. Just like tell the story from start to finish, and the rest will do itself.
Yeah, and I think it's so important for songwriters to be honest and vulnerable, because as you said in our previous interview, you said sometimes it's hard for me to have a conversation or say a certain thing to somebody, but I can express it beautifully in a song.
Exactly. And that's what I always say to people. Like, even when they listen to like certain lyrics, they're like, "Oh, you feel that way?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I would never tell you that, but I was like, I tell myself that in my lyrics." So yes.
So we mentioned this earlier. In 2015, you were on season 9 of NBC's hit show, The Voice, Team Adam Levine. Looking back on that experience, what do you remember most about it? Like, what was one of the most memorable times on that show for you?
Honestly, it's really tough, and you know, it's crazy as the years start to go by. Like little fragments kind of start to slip away, which is like a sad thing because you'll never like remember it like as clearly as it once was when you were there. Right. But I think one of the biggest takeaways and like memories that I like hold is being able to just be around so many musicians, like whether it's cast, crew. Like I think that entire experience, like the more actually I step away from it, the more I actually take away from it as well, because you know the crew, the set, like you know the PAs, all like the producers, everybody on there was such a like a collective unit, and it was a supportive unit. And so I think being able to just be a part of a show and a machine like that, like a movie machine like that at 17 was like absolutely incredible. So I always look back at that and I'm like, I can't believe that I did that as a teenager, as a senior in high school. So that still blows my mind.
Yeah, because I mean, the show still goes on. It's an incredible show. They have a lot of young singers on that show. And I think the judges are very, you know, they're looking for somebody that really moves them and captivates them. And to do that at 17 is such a huge accomplishment, to like get those chair turns and be like, oh my gosh, these people want to work with me.
It still blows my mind because I'll listen back to my blind sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, like if only I had gone on the show. But I mean, things could have been different, but I always say like, if I had only gone on as I'm a little older, my voice matured a little bit more, I always wonder like what if the outcome would have been like slightly different, or, you know, I could have not turned a chair at all. But at the same time, like I always play that like what if game. But it blows my mind at 17 that they turned for, you know, for my little old self.
Yeah, and for those of you guys who are not familiar with the blind audition song, it was Mississippi Queen. Amanda, you killed it. And I love that you sang that song because I think it's such a powerful, amazing song. And for a female to go on a show like that and really rock it, like, because they don't have a lot of rock presence on the show like that.
It's true. And I think that was kind of one of the cool things going out there, you know, and especially with my cast, particularly, like, you know, we were doing showing each other our like audition songs, and like there was just a small fragment of, you know, rock artists especially on there. And you know, I've seen the seasons after, rock is like definitely not predominant, which I think was an advantage for me because, you know, being a female, being young, and then doing such an old song like that, you know, I think it definitely made me kind of like stand out amongst the crowd, you know, as opposed to doing like essentially like a country song or anything like, or a pop song, because, you know, that's just more common on the show rather than like, you know, seeing a girl rocker, which was cool to be and like make my staple on that show at the time.
Yeah, girl rockers are the best. Girl power. I mean, like I said, I love rock music. I wish more rock people were featured on a show like that. And for you to just, I mean, you could have sung any song from the past, you know, 10 years or so, right? But you went back to one of the classics.
I did. And honestly, like at first, when I was looking at the list, that was like one of the songs that I was like, man, like I was like, do I put? And I was questioning it. And I was like, do I put this on here? Like, I don't know if I should or not. And then I was like, you know what? Like there was a gut feeling saying like, throw it on there and see if it sticks. So I threw it out there and then it worked.
Yeah. So if Mississippi Queen wasn't picked for you, is there another song that you would have wanted to sing?
There's two songs, and I always say that they're like my staple songs that I always do, like when I perform live. I would have either loved to have done Creep by Radiohead, which is like a common, you know, song that you hear on these like shows now. or House the Rising Sun, which is kind of a reason why I cringe when I say that, because they become such show staple songs. But those are two that I thought too would have really like helped me out. But at the same time, they could have not, because I always question, like, if I didn't do Mississippi Queen and I did another song, I could have not turned the chairs. So I'm super grateful for having that song and then getting the outcome that I did with the song too.
Definitely. So you were on team Adam Levine. So if you could do a duet with Adam Levine of any song that you wanted to do, what song would it be and why?
So honestly, the thing, like, okay, so after watching my season, and then I continued to watch a few seasons after, there is this song that I loved originally, even before it was done on the show, but it's called Falling Slowly, and it was in the movie One soundtrack, and he actually did it, I want to say it was season either 10 or 11. He did it with Addison Argent, and I was so jealous because, one, I loved that song, and like two, when I heard their version, I was like, oh my gosh, like that, I wish that were me. So if I were to sing a song with him, it would definitely have to be the song Falling Slowly.
Yeah. And I think it needs to happen. I think like you need to like reach out to Adam and just be like, hey, let's do this.
You just send him a quick text and be like,
come on, Adam, you remember me, I was on your team. Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. Why not? Just let's sing a song together, throw it up there, see how it goes. Oh, but that would definitely be the pipe dream of there. It's like a nice little slow little ballady song. But like when I heard them do it, I was like, oh, this is so beautiful. I'm super, super jealous.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about a single that you released last summer called 17.
Yes.
Talk to me about that song.
So 17, actually, and it's crazy just to think that it's going to be a year since that song came out.
Yeah.
But 17 is, that is kind of where I started that synth pop 80s sound. And it's a song about kind of self-reflection again, but in a way of my 23-year-old self when I wrote it against my 17-year-old self. I hear a lot in like the movie and in movies, and there's a lot of songs that reference 17, but there was something so like monumental for me at that age, that I always looked back on and being like, oh, I wish I was 17 again, and being on The Voice at 17. So much had happened at that age that I always was like, I wish I could go back. Oh man, life was so great at that point. And so I was like, why not write a song about being 17 again? And in that sense, I kind of masked it with the romance side of it. But it's a song that I like, and the reception on it was really well too. So it was a song that I absolutely love to this day. I love singing it to this day, and people still, the reception on that one was great too. So that's just a lot. It's a really fun and very nostalgic song.
Yeah, I think 17 is one of those ages, we all loved it. And then when you get to be 18, 19, you're an adult and you move out of your house or you have to start paying bills. It's like, oh my gosh, I loved when I didn't have to have any responsibility.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the lines of the song, not a care in the world, because it's so true. I remember my senior year of high school, I was going to school, but then afterwards was going to hang out with friends. There was literally no responsibility whatsoever. And that was the best feeling. And then the older you get, you're like, man, real life is hit. I know. It's
I wish I could go back because that's when nobody really needed me for anything.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. The stakes weren't held as high. It was just it was very low stakes.
Yeah. So let's talk about the writing with that song.
So it's funny. I the more I kind of depict each single that does come out, the writing process is essentially very, very similar. Synth part, the chord progression of the synth sound, very 80s, came to me. But originally, when I wrote it, the melody was the same. So it was so if you think of me, I hope it takes you back to 17. And it was actually going to be this bitter song. And it was actually going to be, so if you think of me, I hope it fills your head with misery. So it's going to be this bitter song, but I loved the melody of it. And I kind of kept rocking with it. And I was like, no, this is too fun and too playful to have such a bitter song, hoping someone fills your head with misery. So I was like, oh, 17 works. And then it kind of just kept rolling from there. And it was another song that was written in less than an hour, which is kind of crazy. I find that pattern of every single that comes out is the song that was written the fastest. When I sit on songs for a month or two, I'm this might not be single worthy because there's a reason that it's not coming so naturally.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I know some people tend to like write a song and then they'll come to it like a month later and be like, okay, now I have a different set of eyes on it,
Yeah,
right?
it's true because like I'll do that sometimes too. Like I did it with 17 too. It's like I didn't touch it for a while once I finished it, and then I was like, okay, like do I pull this into the studio? And then like the more I listened to it again, I was like, yeah, this has to go in for full production.
And then about the recording when it came to 17.
Yeah, so I recorded my last three singles, especially Hooked, 17, and now Doing Better. With Mark Matter, he has a studio down in Queens called Record House, and you know he has been totally the best in terms of taking my vision and like kind of turning it to life, which is the best. You know, we pull out references of like inspirations and where I want the track to be, and like he just like we at this point he almost like can hear what I want and then just delivers because I only know so much on in terms of production that
Right.
like I bring to the table, but then he really just brings these songs to life. So just it's funny hearing from my demos to then my actual finished product. They're so different
Yeah.
that it takes me a second to get used to again, but then I'm like, oh, I love it. So he does such a great job. So a big shout out to Mark for there.
Yeah. And he sprinkles his magic on it and he just like, he does his little thing and then you're like, whoa!
Exactly.
A whole
Like
other level.
there's like I call it the ear candies. It's like the smallest things on a track, or like a vocal effect, or even like he when in 17 there's like these ending things, like the little ad libs, or like and those little like 17s going in the background, and like he was like just throw them in there, just do as many as you can and see how it sounds. And like when I listen back to that track, I wouldn't have done it. And I listen back and I'm like, oh, that's one of my favorite little ear candies of the track. So like I think that's the greatest thing about collaboration too, is getting just like slightly different ideas that you probably wouldn't have thought on if it was just yourself.
Yeah, I think collaboration is so amazing because it can take your song to a whole nother level. You're like, I never even thought this ad lib thing would have worked, but the way that you kind of brought it all together, I'm digging it.
Exactly. It's great. It's a fresh set of ears and eyes on the track, and they're coming at it, from a place where they're not so attached to it. So they're just kind of going to throw like things at the wall and see what sticks too. Because like when, as a songwriter, you're so attached and you don't want to change things. But when you go with someone else, they're like, hey, why don't you just give this a go? And then, so it kind of like reworks the song a little bit.
Definitely love that so much. So let's talk about a day in the life of Amanda. What is that like?
So okay, so this has been a little bit more for the past like month and a half. This has kind of been like the usual routine. So I'm a dog mom now. So the first thing that I have to do, I gotta walk my dog. I gotta feed him. He's like the first one that I gotta take care of, even before myself. So I'm like, I take care of him first. And then honestly, I think the next thing I do, I get a cup of coffee, iced coffee, and then but I have to I feel like to start the day, instead of looking at my phone right away, I'll do all I need to do, and I will either run or walk on the treadmill for at least an hour and then I'll check my emails that way, just to clear my mind, get my body rolling.
Yep.
And then I kind of just sit into a day, whether it's a writing session or whether it's like your time to go in the studio or record or content, and I think that's kind of it varies like almost every single day in terms of like what needs to get done. Some days it's business, some days it's marketing, some days it's interviews, so but that's like the normal routine, and I kind of like make it like a 9 to 5 kind of gig in terms of music, because I have to look at it in structure. If I have no structure, I'll end up doing nothing for the day.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Like, I feel like it is a 9 to 5 and you need to treat it like one. Cause right. Like, I feel like sometimes musicians are in the studio till late and they're like, oh my gosh, we're in the studio till 4 a.m. last night. And then we slept till like 3 the next day. And it's like, that means your whole day is like done.
Exactly. Like don't get me wrong, like being a night owl, like sometimes that's where the best creative juices kind of flow. But at the same time, like if there's like such slim structure, like again, like I hate losing my day. Like if I have to sleep till 3, I'm like just to then start the day, I'm like, oh, I'm out of it.
Yeah, even on the weekends, I wake up at the same time that I do during the week because everyone's like, oh, you can sleep in. I'm like, no. Like, I have things I need to get done that I want to get done that, like, if I do them after, like, 1 o'clock, it's just not the same. Like, I just don't feel like I'm accomplishing anything. You know what I mean?
It's true. It like completely throws the whole day off, because then normally in the week you start at this time, but now you're like 2 hours behind, which means you're 2 hours later to doing something else. So yeah, I definitely think like structure is like a total big key for there, and it's like good to be organized in that sense. Time management.
Yeah, and I think organization and like time management is so important, right? Because you're talking about like marketing, you're talking about content, you're doing studio sessions, you're doing collabing, and it's kind of like you need to like block out times in your day to do those things and say, okay, 3 hours here, and then I'll take a quick break, and then I'll do like this for another hour, something like that.
Exactly. It's so, so true. And I'm like, that's something that I kind of learned more recently. Like I said, it's been like, because sometimes I'm scatterbrained. I won't lie. I don't put
Yeah.
things in my calendar sometimes, and then like end up screwing me because I'm like, oh great, I forgot that this was in my calendar.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the biggest thing that I've been like taking away is just like putting everything in my phone, making sure that I know what I'm doing the night before I do it, and then just kind of going from there.
Yeah, I like what you said about the night before because I think that's really important because sometimes I think when we think of like the future, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. I need to do this, 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 this. But if you're like, okay, what am I doing Sunday? And you're like, I'm just going to look at it and just be like, oh, I have this, this, this I need to do. Or maybe I'm not doing anything. It's just like, then you can sleep a little bit better because you're not like waking up the next morning being like, oh my gosh, I'm so scattered brain.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Like when you have no idea like what you're kind of like doing or what you have to do, I think that makes you more frantic, and then like that throws everything else off too. So it's just as bad as like going to sleep at 4 a.m. and waking up at 3. Like I look at it the same way.
Totally. What does success mean to you?
That's a really really good question. In terms of music and essentially like on what I would consider as being like successful, like one of the biggest things that I would love to accomplish as an artist is either getting signed to like a management deal, to like and a management deal to go and tour with musicians, or just to be signed to like a sync deal for songwriting. I think just being able to take where I'm at right now just to the next level. I mean, but success is also like so subjective in terms of like people playing a 400 capacity club. Someone
Right.
else playing a 5,000 capacity or 10,000 might not look at that as success. But so it's so subjective in terms of that. But I think at the end of the day, in terms of music, as long as my music is touching people and it's being receptive in a positive way and people are like listening to it organically, I think that's the greatest thing I can take away from it.
Yeah, I think it's got to be so cool when you release a song and you get all this feedback from people. And people are like, I love this song. I put it on my playlist. I've already listened to it 10 times and it hits me in a way. And then they reach out to the artist and they tell you that. And it's just like, you're like, wow, like, thank you for reaching out to me and letting me know that.
It's true. It's like those small gestures kind of are the reason, essentially I feel like why all songwriters do it. Like they do it for themselves, but at the same time, like if it can reach people and touch people, that's exactly why we do it too. Because it's like, we're like, we could be a songwriter and just write for ourselves, like selfishly and keep it. But the fact that you put it out to all streaming platforms to people, like it's meant to be received in the way that you like, we want, and you want to hear that feedback because it keeps you going and it keeps that momentum flowing. Because I know if somebody, like, a lot of people have been reaching out, they've been sharing it, saying, oh, this is so relatable, this and that. And then it's like, okay, like, this is why I do it too. Because it's like, I want to be able to put music out that there's been so many songs that, like, I felt in a way that I'm like, oh my gosh, this really hit me. And, like, I want that to be the same for when people listen to my music too.
Yeah. And I think music is a friend in that capacity, right? Because sometimes we feel like we can't tell friends certain things. But then the music becomes our friend because you're like, yeah, I would actually never say this to anybody, but this song just all encompasses how I feel about this.
Exactly, and that it's so corny. Like when I see certain people, like I always look at it as a corny quote, but it's so true. They say like when words fail, like music speaks. But like
Yes.
it's so like it's been overused so much, but it's so true because it's like when you run out of things to say, like a song can say it all for you.
Now, I know you're a massive Fleetwood Mac fan,
Yes.
and we've talked about this before. So I want to talk about how Fleetwood Mac has influenced you as an artist.
I think Fleetwood Mac definitely. I'm looking at their Making of Rumors book right now as I just looked at and their vinyl is like sitting right up there too. So definitely Fleetwood Mac though, I watched their live performances specifically, and I think that's where I really hone in on their inspiration because you go from listening to their records and then you go from listening to their live versions and then they're completely different, and every single live version that you might see of Fleetwood Mac is different, like even different tour dates. And I think that's so cool to hear because it's like you never know what you're going to expect and you never know which version of the same song that you're going to get when you go see them. And I think that's something that's so unique. And that's something that now I've been trying, you know, to do in my live shows. It's like, change the version. You don't want to, it's cool when you go see a song and you listen to a song live and it's like, it's the same version that you know, but it's also even cooler when you say, oh my God, I heard this live version of it that is nowhere else to be, you know, seen or heard except live. So I think that's like a special thing that I've kind of been taking away from Fleetwood, and especially Stevie Nicks, because I listen to, like, she changes the notes, she'll write like new lyrics live, you know, to the same song. So I think it's super a unique approach, and it's so iconic.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because, right, like, I've seen artists before and they sing and they sound exactly like their album. I'm like, no, but like, I could just listen to the album, like, just do something a little crazy for me.
Exactly. Like, it's just like that slight difference where, like, you know, you're only going to be able to hear that type of version one way and it's live, you know, or like, you know, slightly different. I think that's what makes the experience that much more organic too.
Definitely. So tell the beautiful people watching right now how they can support you, Amanda, as a musician. What can they do?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing to support me as a musician is, you know, is streaming, sharing my music, and, you know, just kind of, you know, all, like, they say numbers don't like necessarily matter, but I think it's just like, honestly, just like streaming the songs, you know, engaging in the content. And I think,
right,
like, I'm super grateful for that. And only if you like it. Like, you don't have to, you know, as, again, like, music is so subjective, but, you know, just listen, stream the songs, add it to your playlist if you like it, and, like, just give it a share if you can. And that's honestly, like, that's the name of the game when it comes to music. It's just exposure and, you know, sharing and just getting as much content out there. So I would appreciate it. And I'm very appreciative to all that have, you know, been supporting my career thus far.
Yeah, and there's a pinned comment that says go on the streaming platforms and stream it, add it to your playlist, share it with friends, because, you know, if you love music, share it with the people that you love, because we can only know so much music, right?
Exactly. And I find myself literally trying to find new songs and new artists, like, literally every single day. So if you're that type of person too, that's key.
Definitely. So that's all the questions I have for you this evening, but you have one more song that you're going to perform for us.
Yes. So I'm going to do the, my last single, 17, that came out just about a year ago. So if you like this one too, you can check it out on iTunes, Spotify, wherever your preferred streaming platform is. So this is 17. I have to find that. There it goes. Driving around, getting lost all over town. Not old enough to sneak into the bars around us. Still remember the feeling, and we never wanted to let go. We looked down, we were screaming that we never wanted to go home. So if you think of me, I hope it takes you back to 17, like ripping pages out of movie scenes. We were falling in love when we were 17. Ooh, not a care in the world is me. Ooh, back when we were back at home. Sometimes stop at the places we used to go. It still takes me back to that feeling that we had when we were young. Beat on your dash, music's fully blasting. Headed to some party, burning right with crashing. Those were the nights we lived for. They're fading away, they're fading away. So if you think of me, I hope it takes you back to 17, like ripping pages out of movie scenes. We were walking in love when we were 17. Ooh, not a care in the world is me. Ooh, oh, back when we were 17. If
think of me, I hope it takes you back to 17. Hope you hold on to the memories, 'cause I was falling in love. So if you think of me, I hope it takes you back to 17. Like ripping pages out of movie scenes. We were born in love when we were 17. Ooh, whoa, not a care in the world it seems. Ooh, whoa, back when we were 17.
Yes!
Thank you so much.
Amanda, thank you. So, so, so beautiful. So, for people that want to know what's coming up in the next couple months, what's coming up?
Yes, okay, so a few show dates are going to be announced at the end, hopefully at the end of this month. Fingers crossed that I get the A-OK to post and things like that. So stay tuned on all the social medias, because there's going to be some show dates going to be announced very, very soon with me and my incredible band, Tom, Mike, and Matt. So we're excited about that, and we're starting up rehearsal once again. So stay tuned for those show dates where you get to hear those 2 songs along with many, many more live.
Yes, it's so exciting.
So I'm looking forward to it. You know, it's been a while since I've been like back, you know, doing live shows since the pandemic. So it's a nice refresher to just to be back with a full band and, you know, doing what we love to do on the road, which is really exciting.
Definitely. Well, do you have time for some questions from the audience?
Absolutely. Any question? I'm here to answer.
Beautiful. Guys, if you're in the chat right now and you have questions for Amanda, please feel free to put them in the comment section below.
Throw it on in there.
Yes. Would you go back on a show like The Voice or American Idol?
It's a good question. Like I'd like to say yes,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess I mean like I always say, like I think the exposure from those shows are so great, and like they really catapult you, and like that's why I'm super grateful for the opportunity that The Voice put me in, and so I think I would definitely be open to the opportunity to go on something like that again. I always get so like when you're competing for your craft. I wish there was a show that it was like more of like building and like a reality show of like the life as like independent artists, or like artists trying to you know, with the come up, like especially like you get artists wanting to be on The Voice, like, you know, get their stories and like, you know, like a workshop show. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, because it's like there's so many amazing people that make it onto these shows like The Voice and American Idol, right? And it's like, and then there's only one winner, and it's like, oh my gosh, but there were so many incredible singers on these shows.
Exactly, and I think that's like the hardest thing is, and then you're friends with them, and now you're competing, and now you're like, oh, someone's going home, and that's why I always say, like, I think it's just cool. Like I would, even if I wasn't even on it, like I would just love to watch a show that like is like building artists from like start to finish and kind of like sending them off into, you know, into stardom, which I think is such a cool concept too. So if there's any producers or like television execs out there.
Yeah. I think that's a great idea, because like it's not just, oh my gosh, this is the best singer of this season. Like everybody that makes the show is good. Like there's so many people, even the people that don't even get to blind auditions, as you know, there's all these people in like these holding rooms that never get their number called, and it's like, but they're good too. They just didn't have an opportunity to get in front of these judges.
Exactly, and that's one of the things too. I always say, like, win, lose, or like not even if you don't turn a chair, like it doesn't invalidate you as a musician. Like you're still a musician. At the end of the day, you're still going to make music, whether, you know, they turned or whether they liked you or not, because, you know, music is something, if you love to do it, just do it, and don't do it for anybody's like approval or button press or like a golden ticket, which it's fun to get, and at the end of the day, but at the same time, like it's something that you love to do, always pursue it.
Yeah, you always need to lean into what you're passionate about, what you love, because that's what's ultimately going to make you happy in the end.
Exactly, and I say this too, like music's so subjective. Like there's so many people that I've known that have like gotten turned away or didn't even get to go on the show, and they're actually like essentially more successful than they probably would have been, you know? So yeah. It's like always a hit or miss, and like I always say, things work out in the way that they're supposed to.
Totally, I definitely agree with you. Any other questions from the audience?
I know they got cold feet.
Maybe I asked all the questions that people wanted to hear. I don't know.
It's all right. No, they were good questions too. I enjoyed answering them too.
So I know that you would love to work with Stevie Nicks. Which Fleetwood Mac song would you want to sing with her?
Oh, that's a really hard question too.
I know.
I think an unpopular one, I mean, it's not unpopular, but for me, because especially everyone that knows like the songs that I love by Fleetwood Mac, I would definitely love to sing Gold Dust Woman with Stevie Nicks, especially. I mean, there's so many, like, Dreams, Landslide.
I know.
I think Gold Dust Woman would be like my top tier choice to sing with Stevie Nicks.
Yeah, I love that song. And actually, when you said that, it actually just had chills run down my body because I was thinking of that song. And I was like, how amazing would it be to have Amanda and Stevie sing that song? Like,
it's a dream, an absolute dream. That song is like my go-to around Halloween time. It's eerie. It just makes you feel something like, oh, Gold Dust Woman is a top tier one.
Yeah, and the Rumors album, like, what? That body of work is like nothing else.
It's true. Like, I listen, I'm like, there's like not a bad song on there. I can listen to that album front to back 3 times in a row and with no problem because it's just so good.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful piece of work. So, Amanda, any final words for the room?
Well, for you, once again, thank you so much for having me on again. This has been a blast. Like, I literally loved being on here. I love being a part of the show. And it's the 159th episode?
Yeah, 159.
159. Yeah, see, that's so awesome. So thank you for having me a part of 2 of those 159s. That's such a cool thing to be a part of. So thank you. And a big shout out to everybody that's watched.
Yes. And please come back when you have any fun projects that you want to talk about because I love having you on this show. And thank you for coming on for a second episode. Guys, if you don't already, please make sure to follow Amanda. Stream the single, buy the single, put it on your playlist. And Amanda has some really cool things that she's going to announce in the next coming weeks. And you can see her live in person. So go check her out. Give her a follow. And guys, if you don't already, please make sure to follow me. I'm Ashley Live. So give us both a follow. Have a great weekend. Be safe. And any final words from you?
Thank you guys so much. And a big shout out to everybody that's been streaming the song. So thank you again. And enjoy the rest of your Saturday night and weekend.
Yes, enjoy your weekend and go stream the song.
Yeah, there we go. Good plug.
Bye, guys. Have a great night.
Take care.
Bye-bye.